Oh no, that's the sequel. Plans and announcements.
So, I'm going to start with my personal story.
Oh.
It's back in 2012 before we ever met. I'm at a writing convention with Trisha Narwani and Mike Grass, who are two great editors. And Trisha comes up to me and she's like, "Hey, we need an advanced reading copy of this book. We picked up this book from this young guy, and he's really talented, and we're really excited about this. This book's got legs." So she gave me the book, this Red Rising book right here, whatever. And I look him up, and the person that comes to my mind is like, "Damn, this kid's got good hair." So,
Man, you missed my bowl cut days.
oh, you know what?
Yeah, I look like Sonic the Hedgehog.
First round 2012 in my head, I'm going to keep it that way.
It's better. This is the depreciating aspect.
But fast forward 10 years to 2022, and Pierce now is the #1 New York Times best-selling author of The Red Rising Sun. He was the author of 5 books, with the new one, Lightbringer, coming out in December. And that is the title. So, Pierce, the last time I saw you was, I think it was January 2020.
Since we know the book is coming out, my friend Joel Daniel Phillips, who created all these symbols for the Red Rising world, has created this beautiful propaganda poster. We're going to hang off the edge here. I was going to wear it as a cape, but then I got insecure and thought it'd be too douchey. I'm going to wear it out as a cape, depending on how this goes.
What's the bottom say?
There we go. The bottom?
It was redacted.
Oh, it's written. Oh, okay. So the 6th book, not the perfect news, but the 6th book is coming out. What date was it?
I read December.
Trisha, where are you? May 2023. May 2023? Oh my God. May 2nd, 2023. Sorry, that's a mouthful. I appreciate you guys waiting so much. And part of the reason that there's going to be a longer wait is because I realized that this book, I was trying to do too much. So the 6th book will not be the last one. There'll be a 7th book. Unfortunately, it took me a little bit of existential angst to realize this, as I don't know if you guys have had an awkward time with it these last couple of years. I did, and it was a more difficult thing to write this book than I thought, and I realized I was just trying to cram too much in and had opened up too many cans of worms to just finish it because I wanted to be done. It's not right to do stuff like that. So I wrote the book, and then I threw out half the book, and then I rewrote the book, and then I realized it was 2 books. So more writing to be done, but more books for y'all. So thank you for your patience so much. I don't take it for granted. I feel like a kid who has homework that's constantly due, and you might have seen vacation pictures lately, and it's mostly so I can stay sane. So anyway, now we can get to the regularly scheduled program.
Yeah, so 2020 January was the last time I saw
A few creative things on the side in order to keep my brain sane, but mostly trying to figure out the best way to finish out the series and to close out all the character arcs of the people who I've come to love and have been with me for 10 years now. I started writing this when I was 22, now I'm 34, and it's very strange to evolve with characters like that. At times it creates a lot of anxiety. I'll be laying in bed and I'll start doing the math on it, and I'll be like, I should be doing this faster, shouldn't I? And then I realize the books are like now 850 pages and stuff, and I'm thinking that might be part of the problem. But then I wrote another 800 pages, so you're not going to get a truncated volume, that's for sure. So mostly I've been pouring myself into that. I've been doing a lot of gardening. My dog and I have, she's trained me very well. I think she's developed a nervous anxiety disorder, so now we have a war that's going on with moles on the property.
I get that.
Yeah.
I had that too.
Oh yeah.
Welcome to LA.
Yeah, we have a kill sheet.
Ooh.
Yeah, she's ahead.
How do you get your moves?
How?
I try to trap mine, and they'll outsmart me.
Yeah, you can trap them, well, this gets dark. You can trap them, you can gas them. You don't poison them because then your dog could get poisoned. That would be.
I did it just.
Well, if you could, if you're a savvy engineer, you can make an intro. Yeah, fantastic. You can't do flooding because, LA is built in a desert.
We're built in the desert.
Yeah.
Our sprinkler systems.
Yeah. So it's been interesting.
I ended up just getting fake grass.
Fake grass. The problem with fake grass for me is that when your dog urinates on it, that ammonia smell is always in there. That's true, right? Yeah. And so when I go to those houses, I'm like, I can't make it out here. And they also have a picnic next to ammonia,
It's better than moles. I literally took them anyway.
Sorry.
Yeah, so
Those of you in the audience who have had issues and dealings with moles can sympathize. The rest of you can be like, I'm insane. But if you ever, like years from now, when you encounter moles who devastate your lovely property, you will understand, you'll think back in this moment, and you'll think I wasn't extreme enough.
I'm from Chicago originally, and back in Chicago, or living in a condo or whatever, the only thing I ever cared about was like a leaky roof. A leaky roof like ruined my day. But I moved to LA, and suddenly like everything wants to kill me. There's like earthquakes and fires and rattlesnakes. Oh man,
That was me when I moved to Arizona. Yeah.
Scorpions.
Scorpion, yeah. There were scorpions in your shoes. Like, I was from Iowa. I didn't know that could
Are
happen.
you from Iowa?
Well, I lived in 8 states. Yeah, we moved around. But scorpions, there's palm thorns. You went from Arizona here? Yeah, well, anyway, you step on these things and your foot swells up the size of a cantaloupe. It's crazy. I didn't know cantaloupes even were that. But I found out. So we compared it.
Did you step on one?
I stepped on a palm thorn, not a cantaloupe.
Okay.
I have since then. Cantaloupe. Thank you for asking.
So you're saying you started writing Red Rising 12 years ago, right?
Gosh, yeah, I was 22. It didn't get published until 2014, but it was 12 years ago now, which is very strange. I feel as though we've taken this, giant decade leap forward in the last 2 years for some reason. There's before and after, and I think it's because of the inability to populate the intermediate years with memories, at the same time. And so time seems to jump, but yeah, it was that long ago.
So Daryl at Piercetown 22, how has he evolved in a way over the past 12 years that you weren't expecting? Now that you're 5 books in.
Well, this is part of the reason for one of the big reasons for the delay of the books is the initial book 6 Darrow that I was writing was far more a product of my 20s. It was a product of the things you guys have known to come to hate and love about him, which is his anger, his brooding, all these kind of darker tendencies. And I was starting to, I wrote most of the book that way, and then I realized that was the wrong tack to take, particularly at where I was in my life. And so there's been this wonderful, but also difficult parallel between his path and mine, I suppose, in coming to an understanding about the world he exists in. And I think when he was younger, he was just angry. Angry about the resistance of the system, angry about the domestication that he had when he was younger, aggrieved at something larger than himself and having a complete lack of agency. And I think, honestly, writing these books is what gave me agency in life. And it was reading books that allowed me to have agency when I was younger. And so I found that, because we moved around a lot, I moved to 8 states, following my parents around. And I wasn't able to take my friends with me, so I took my books with me. And I existed, most of my, I'd say 90% of my brain activity existed in the Star Wars universe, in the universes. And I've read every single one of the expanded universe of Star Wars books, from Splinter of the Mind's Eye all the way up through the Usual Bond series. And it's like 100 and something books. And that was my constant, more so than the world around me. And in many ways, Darrow has been my constant, more than the world around me. But I think that in my 20s, everything seemed so important and so, I say, close. Like the art seemed so important. And then I think during COVID, it didn't seem very important, and I had to make it feel important to me again. And I realized it didn't feel important because Darrow's journey didn't feel authentic. He hadn't changed enough. The whole point of novels is to show a character change over time, change over story. Confront obstacles, go around and go over them, or Darren's case, go through them. Yeah, you already know that. Yeah. Go through them, and I realized that in many ways I wasn't being honest enough with Darrow and honest enough with the series. Because while there are other POVs in the books, I think the temptation is to keep spreading it out, blossoming it out, and then forget that Darrow is really the spine of it and the point of it, and people around him. And so I really brought it back to that instead of continuing to expand out with more characters. Because a lot of the series that I love and appreciate and look up to did that. They kept expanding through characters and trying to make you care about characters who came along later on in the series, but really care in your heart about the original DNA, the original people. And so book 6 is my return to that. Instead of continuing to go outward, it's blossom out and go back in. I don't know what the question was. I'm rambling. I have you hostage here for like the next 40 minutes. It's great.
Definitely, like in your earlier books, we saw a lot of anger, a lot of sense for revenge and justice in Red Rising and the sequels. And then for Iron and Gold, definitely we see a more like war-weary kind of Gerald. And in many ways, even though he's infinitely more confident than he was in the first 2 books, he's also more doubtful because he's just, once you know more, you question more.
You're a writer, you know that. Yeah, it's way easier to write your first books, isn't it? And you weren't as good a writer.
Oh, absolutely. And the more you know, the more you doubt like what you're doing because you can see the problems.
And you can see the problems, but more so, I feel that it's hard to be honest because you're coming at it from here, right here. And those first books are here.
Yeah,
It's desperation. You're desperate to tell your story. You're desperate to express yourself, so it becomes cathartic to write. But once you've expressed yourself, then you become almost more defensive. You hole up in your castle. You build higher walls. You put, I think this is true in any life. As soon as you have something to lose, you become more conservative. You become afraid of making a mistake that'll fuck it all up, as opposed to going out there and doing the thing that made you able to have the castle, so to speak. And I think that was a flaw that I was seeing in my own life, a flaw that I was seeing in Darrow, and a flaw that I was seeing in my writing. And so I really tried to go back out there, take the terror in the countryside, so to speak, instead of just sitting in the castle and growing, ancient and torpor.
Did you pants 3 first books, or did you outline everything?
I pantsed my first 3 books.
First, all 3 books you pants?
Yeah.
And then did you outline your last 3, or last 2?
I did, yeah. And I find that I don't like outlining. I try so hard to outline, but then I feel like you lose the passion because you've already arrived at the epiphany. I do think I need some vague outline. Maybe if I think for my next book, I'll just be a paragraph. But I did a 25-page outline for book 6, and I found that I was very bored when I was writing it because I knew where it would go. I knew the beats, and I was spending too much time in the chapters trying to earn it as opposed to getting to the exciting things. And that really, when you think about it, comes from what I talked about earlier: fear of losing what you've gotten, losing the story that I enjoy telling and that you hopefully enjoy reading. And when you are operating from that place, all that really is insecurity. And when you write when you're insecure, it doesn't work as well because you're just trying to prove that this is a justified decision, this is a justified action, as opposed to getting to the fun stuff and then explaining it afterwards.
Right. I mean, I pantsed my very first book, and then ever since then I've been outlining. And what I've learned, just like you said, is sometimes when you create an outline, you kind of put your characters in a box where you want them to make a right turn, and you got to make a right turn, but they don't want to make a right turn. So what do you do?
Well, yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I find that when I outline, it's this happens, then this happens, then this happens. But when I write, kind of with a vague idea, I say this happens, but then this happens. This happens, but then this happens, but then this happens. And that's way more fun for me to get up every morning and being like, I wonder what this chicken calls. As opposed to, I'm going to fill in this section of my outline, in a thicker form.
I mean, what I've been doing more recently is I would outline
driving everything to a character needing to make a decision, and you get to that point and you're like, is this emotionally honest for the character? And a lot of times you'll find out no, and you'll waste a month even trying to figure out how to justify that decision before you really realize the character wouldn't do that. And then you have to unravel it, but that's a lot like playing Jenga. How many pieces can you pull out to change before the structure falls?
strategy is kind of breaks apart.
Yeah.
So, how's the writing been during the pandemic? I mean, how's your process been treating you?
A bit like Groundhog Day, to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, I don't, I'm lucky enough to have all the time in the world to write, but I thought I thought when the pandemic began, you know, I'd enter into like, I don't know, like a Stephen King book, and all this, like, I'd be one of his, you know, author characters who just, you know, was hunched at the typewriter for 8 hours a day with the system, you know, and found something out, and then something magical would happen. But what I found was I'm far more extroverted than I thought I was.
Had you picked an extrovert? Extrovert.
I know everyone thinks I'm an extrovert, but I'm not. It's all fake. No, I spend energy on people. I love interacting, but I spend energy that I acquire by myself. And then I found that I was having difficulty acquiring energy because it was the same experience all the time. I'm lucky enough that none of my close family was hurt or, you know, lost their lives or injured during the epidemic, but I did have friends who had that. And so I felt almost like this voyeur to this thing that was happening in the world without really being connected to the world. Right? So I found it, you know, very difficult to write creatively and to inspire.
Yeah. I mean, and all my friends were like, yeah, you know, your life is the exact same. You never left the house anyway, so what's the big deal?
It was cool and everyone else had to leave the house, but when
I know, oh my
God, I'm just like a sheep again.
I don't like people being in my house.
Yeah, I go back to work.
And technically, even though the way I think about it is, yes, nothing physically has changed, but mentally, like all my headspace is just like overwhelmed by like 10 a.m.
Yeah, I think it's too much time to scrutinize what you're doing. You know, it's too much time to scrutinize your patterns, your behaviors, your writing, and you indict yourself for it. And so instead of growing, you just stay in this place of constant self-examination.
You're just going in circles.
Yeah.
I mean, I must have thrown away like 130,000 words.
Did you manage to finish the book this year? Or the last 3 years?
I have. I had.
I tried so hard.
I also have 2 kids since then. You know,
I didn't.
I don't think. You know what? I sold the books off of partial. I finished it in 2020 with both kids in the house, and both of my kids are under 6 years old, so it's kind of like, you know. And then after that, it just broke me. Like book 2 just broke me, and I spent a year rewriting like 60,000 words over and over again.
Yeah, just massaging it. Yeah. And then by the end, you're like, what is this Byzantine monstrosity?
And then you throw it away.
Yeah. I actually printed out because I don't know why. Like, I bought this one of those big like printers that you see.
Like those big enterprise.
When you get out of college, when you get out of college and you know you think you're going to be running the world, and you know getting coffee and making copies of things. It was one of those printers, just was like on sale, and so I printed out the book, and then the thing I did, and I burnt it. And, yeah.
I mean, do you get rid of all the digital copies as well?
No, I'm not crazy.
So it's very small.
Yeah. I mean, it was just it was a little drama for years.
Okay. So I mean, did you adapt your way of working to get through this, or are you just
initiated? Scrivener has a wonderful template where you can see all your chapters at once, and you can see different parts of your book, and it's wonderful for organization. I found that it was too much information, and so I was constantly dancing around, tap dancing, so to speak, between chapters, fixing things, writing things out of order, and I was never able then to find the flow of the book. And so I found really that when I was trying to for like a year and a half or 2 years, I was writing on Scrivener, and it messed me up more than I can say. Because I write linearly, I write down the page. I show up and all I know is don't reread, write down the page. Yet the Scrivener, the temptation was too great. Click. Oh, I'm back at the beginning. Oh, that's not a good word phrasing. But sink in, and then all of a sudden you're an editor, you're not a writer. And so Scrivener turned me into an editor. And so after that, colossal fuck up. Still, I got a groove back. Back to Microsoft Word. I function best in ignorance. I think, the first draft is the first draft. It should be ignorant. It should be silly. You should not know everything. You should not be able to dance back and forth and go. You're supposed to get it done. Because how can you diagnose what's wrong with the patient until you have a patient?
I mean, I find that once I put my editor hat on, I'm just wallowing then in like editor work.
Oh my God!
It's a whole different part of my brain.
yeah, I mean, my editor's here, and she's just shaking her head probably because, and she kept like, whenever we talk on the phone, she's like, I'm here whenever you need me. 6 months go by, how you doing, Pierce? I'm fine, and it's funny because you become a perfectionist and no one's read your stuff. I used to have this whole, I think what was weird about this book is that I used to have like a phalanx of friends that read my stuff that I was excited to share with. And then in this new one, I didn't share the book with any of these people because I wrote it in such a strange way with Scrivener that none of it made linear sense. It was all pop, 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 and then there'd be like, a whole section that would be like, this happens and this happens, but it wouldn't be written out, so there would be no emotional evolution of the characters. So I'd get down to scenes that I'm writing near the end of the book without having written the stuff that would change their emotional engagement with that moment. And I didn't know what they were saying to each other because I don't know what their emotions are. And so Scrivener was a learning lesson.
I love Scrivener.
I don't know, it wasn't my
Mainline that into my interview.
it's organized, I get it that.
It does require like a sense of like focus and that kind of like tunnel vision on what you're doing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you can get overwhelmed.
Oh yeah, don't have dog chasing cars, like, or shiny things, like.
You're like new scene, and you go into it.
Yeah.
6 hours later, you're like,
100%. That's exactly what happens. Yeah. Then I'll put on the right music and I'm like, what this music reminds me of? And then I'll go back to a space battle that was at the beginning of the book. and I'll get my jazz on and I'll be like, oh my God, it's now 3 a.m. I thought I was writing Mustang's death sequence today.
So, did you get a pandemic copy?
Did I get a pandemic copy? I bought an ocarina, man. A musical instrument from Zelda. I got that and started playing that shit. Yeah, the little pipe. It is so complicated. There's like 13 holes. So I did that. My garden, oh my God, you guys should have seen my garden. It was amazing. And then I come out there like, I'm gonna eat all my tomatoes. And now all my friends are, we're gonna eat my tomatoes, we're gonna eat my squash. These aren't metaphors, we're gonna eat the vegetables. and not only do I have agreements with the moles, the coyotes attacked. My entire garden was destroyed. And I was like watering that thing like every day for 3 months, and then the garden got destroyed. So that was a hobby.
Did you go to war? You go to war?
You legally can't.
That is true.
Yeah, and morally too, you can't. Yeah, the coyotes and we have agreements.
There's a lot of
I have a
coyotes.
20-pound dog, and like if I was a coyote, she would look like filet mignon running with a tail. So I understand. So I was gardening. I was playing my ocarina. Seriously. I even had like this hat. Never mind. I was like trying to establish healthy rituals, and so I had a hat that my friend who's Pakistani got me, the traditional Pakistani cap. And so it was my private time in the mornings. I would journal and write, play my ocarina. We have big dreams, and sometimes they die. What was the question? Hobbies. Self-ridicule.
Did you watch my video right when you were young?
No, I didn't know it was possible. No, I didn't know it was possible until I was probably 18.
Is that when you started writing and writing?
No, I wrote 6 books that did not work, and then I wrote Red Rising. This is my last cry.
You wrote 6 books since when you were 18 and 22?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say they were good books.
Books are books, man.
Yeah. No, actually, my first.
You did finish.
Yeah, my first book was called Requiem for Light. Very serious title. And it was like a 700-page monster fantasy book about knights who ride Pegasuses and griffins and all that sort of things, but they're wildly corrupt. And there's some interesting things. The crazy thing about it is I was rereading it, and there's pit vipers in it. And the main character is very similar to Daryl. It's very strange the things that from your early writing you end up then taking and refining.
How much of Daryl was you, though? I mean, really.
Well,
My first main character was very mean, and that's probably because I was younger.
Well, Daryl might be like the idealized me. Truthfully, I'm more separate. Except for I have way better personal grooming standards. But that's because, y'all bought my book and I can afford clippers. Yeah, but so there were books at the beginning, but I think it wasn't, I had not found my voice yet. And then I wrote down the line, there's a flower that grows on Mars. It's called The Americas Singing Blood Blossom, and I just knew I had a tone, and so I just ripped from there. But I know it was, I was just kind of impassioned. It was easier to write when you're younger because you don't know anything, and you get so much energy. I'd sit there for 10 hours at a time, just the only thing that would make me get up was my laptop dying. And it would get too hot when it was plugged in, and I was worried about my reproductive organs. So, and then I would put a pillow there, and I'd be writing a T-Rex. But I had a circular couch that was perfect, and I wrote 6 books on that circular couch.
Are any of those ever going to come out?
What the other ones?
Any of your pre-Red Rising books?
Well, it depends. It's like, do I want? You guys you guys thinking less of me or money? So probably not. There's some fun things in there. There certainly are. I had one which is like my version of kind of a Chronicles of Narnia meets Shock.
Okay.
Which is fun.
I'm intrigued.
Yeah. It's 2 kids coming home from on the eve of World War II, being evacuated from England before the Blitz, and their ship sinks, and they wake up on a snowy hand in the middle of the ocean, and then they go down into the hand. So that's kind of that's cool. It's fun. Yeah, but I found that we'll see. I have no ideas that I'm eager to explore. All right. Yeah.
I mean, are there any genres that you kind of want to explore outside of what we do?
That is not a metaphor. Let's move forward. Fantasy. I think you guys know that Red Rising is sci-fi fantasy, science fantasy, so to speak. I don't think that genre, is a ironclad system. I think all my stuff will be a mashup, but I want to do kind of a history fantasy next.
It's kind of like playing Golden Ring, it's kind of like.
I haven't played Golden Ring. I'm not allowed to until I finish the book.
That's probably it's like the whole mixed class thing where it's like it's not quite a warrior. Magic.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, I was like being like the rogue. Yeah, we have some magic.
Throw more like a
Yeah, what's your favorite?
I'm always a wizard.
You're always a wizard.
Yeah, because like I did a lot of martial arts, so like I quote unquote fought in real life, and so like I can't cast spells in like in real life, so I want to be a wizard when I play a game.
Makes a lot of sense.
I mean, it's very like FOMO driven, I think.
Yeah, sure. It's always interesting seeing what I kind of judge my friends who like get the really good looking avatar, and I'm just like, you can be anything and you choose to just be good looking. How conventional.
Do you make your characters look like you, or are you making like?
No, I make them look like the internet. Freaky. Yeah, I'm always like, the drow or the, reptile.
I'm always making wizards. That's
I understand. It makes sense. Yeah.
But you're always a rogue.
No, I'm not always a rogue, but I always get irritated when I'm not a rogue. Because then I see someone playing a rogue and it's way cooler and more fun.
Do you play a lot of those like the sneaky games, the PC video games?
Well, I don't play many games anymore.
Oh, what are you playing?
And torture myself by writing. That's what I do. I don't play any games, man. No. Except I love the Total War series so much. I started playing Shogun when I was a kid. Does anyone play Total War here? Yeah, okay. So you guys know, like the AI has not really advanced much, but the novelty is still there. It's like you got Rome 2, which I go back to a lot. I love the Troy version. I thought it was great.
Three Kingdoms is like one of my favorite games.
Is a fantastic one. Fantastic game.
Great. I mean, it's based off of enough like real life legend and lore history that like I'm like learning stuff about about like ancient China.
Yeah, I'll dive into those. My problem is I have no ability to self-monitor, and I will play until 6 in the morning, and then I will drink a lot of coffee and keep playing until I can't, and then I kind of crash, and then I'll be like, oh yeah, I'm a writer, I should go back to that. So like I'll play video games once every 3 months, but I'll play for like 2 days straight, and and then I'll be like, I
You
can't
can't
do
do
this.
system and then you go back to
Yeah, well, it's good because the AI hasn't changed, as we all know who played Rome Total War, which is basically empire building stuff, and you get to control huge legions of men and empires. But when the AI cheats, it just kind of spans you, it just gets much more.
Yeah.
But I think we only have 15 minutes left, so maybe we should kick it over to
So
you.
let's open up for questions. Are there any questions?
Darrow, when you were writing the character, did you base him on any historical figure? Like, or have you, since you wrote the character of Darrow, thought of a historical character that you could fit him into, like Marcus Aurelius or something
Well,
like
it's
that?
interesting. Some of his on a tactical level, he's very much like General Patton. I wouldn't say as a character though. I'd say sometimes in his use in the battlefield. I think of him sometimes as like a reluctant Julius Caesar type. Not in terms of Julius Caesar, like as we know him in Shakespeare, but kind of like what he was really like. And if you read the Gallic campaigns, you just see how analytical he is, and if he's besieging a city and he's hundreds of thousands of people, and then an army comes up from behind him, he doesn't quit the siege, he builds another wall behind him. And then it's like, he's besieged and then he still wins. So I think he's one of them, but I also like Alexander's General Seleucus, who was also a pretty good inspiration for him. And Spartacus, of course, just archetype.
You, sir?
Who's like your funnest character to write, and why is it Victor?
Well, I said long ago, if any of my characters were to kill me, I would go with my head crushed between Victor's thighs. And the best thing about writing her is I know she would like why she's so fun to write is because I know she'd do it with a smile on her face. She's got style, she's got grace. I love that girl. Yeah, she's most fun because I think Severo can sometimes be a cipher for me of like how much comedy do you, how deep comedy do you take him, how much comic relief is he, and then how true you stay to his initial character as the dark outsider. So that's what he is. He's funny, but you can take him into a ludicrous direction, which would then demean the character. Whereas Victra, it's so fun to just write an obnoxious patrician who's also got your back. She's Cassius without all his emotional trauma. Initial Cassius is really fun too. He was great because he was just so fucking arrogant. And I've always loved that arrogant imperialist who's like, oh my god, like Michael Caine from what was it? Anyway, yeah.
Well, you in the far back?
So the question I have is, when you were writing Dark Age, did you have second thoughts about no time and with Alex and or any other defined books to wish I could have gone and changed this or changed that?
The reason you ask that question means yes, because you see all the possibilities of keeping him in the story and all the possibilities of that fight. And I saw them too, and I wanted to do them. And then I realized that's something I've done before to a degree. And the reason it hurts and stings and sticks with you, the same thing with F, is that you see the path ahead of them, the way they were changing, what they were growing into. And that's how I knew the decision was correct. Did I want to do it? No, and that's why I had to do it. Plus, man, if there's any character that would do that, it would be Lysander.
Is there any inkling of an update you could provide on some sort of visual media TV show or movie?
Oh boy, I wish we were on my time schedule on this one. That's another reason that this book has been taking a little while, as I've been splitting my time to work on that. So yeah, it's been optioned and then re-optioned again recently by a big streamer. But we're still in the development process. The fortunate thing is they want to put enough money behind it that they know they can't fuck up. Which is good. Yeah, good and bad. And the whole point of it is it's not a project that's just gathering dust. There's constantly a team working on it, but unfortunately Hollywood moves at its speed. And its speed, oh my god. Yeah, the frustration. The good thing is the people who are working on it, I think, all have the same vision that I do, which is to make this thing a close, literal adaptation of the books, not something that changes something for convenience. I mean, the first meeting I had in Hollywood pitching Red Rising was after Mars Needs Moms and John Carter had come out. And the producer, a big producer, with not even a joke in his eyes, asked if we move it to Venus. Like, do you really want Pink Rising? What you do in your own time is your time. And I think that there's, initially Red Rising always struggled with people who wanted to change fundamental aspects. When it was at Universal and being adapted, I was agog at how much they just wanted to change willy-nilly without any thought of how it affected the later books. And that's because I realized they hadn't read the later books, as so often is the case. Now I think it's at the right home. Just hopefully we can convince our hosts to let us make it. So no time frame on it, unfortunately, still developing it, but I'll keep you guys in the loop as soon as the gag is lifted.
Is it live action? Or?
As of now, it is live action.
You know what happens with Darrow? I think you kind of answered a little bit to that earlier. Would you consider, continuing the saga with Pax?
Let's just say I like keeping my options open. Yeah, for me it's a feeling thing. It's not a grand scheme thing. If I feel I have a story to tell there, yeah. But if not, I won't stretch it past what's right. And that's all based on my dad at the time. So hard to say, but I would like to keep my options open in that regard. But I think there's also a possibility in the Red Rising future to go to prequels. The contrary. I think there's a lot of interesting material to work with there, and it's unlike a lot of other prequels. You don't know what's going to happen exactly, or how it's going to happen. There's a lot of mystery of what actually happened between Akara and Selenis. There's a lot of mystery with John Nerdwater, who's he's my favorite character, man. Tell Alonso there.
Yeah.
We got. I think that there's a lot of, how would I say it? There's a lot of things that I could do in the Red Rising world that may have to do with the characters we know and love, but I also think one of the flaws of the Star Wars, the new ones, is basically they're continuing this idea of aristocracy, of these noble bloodlines, which I think is kind of against the Star Wars spirit. I don't believe in loyalty, and so focusing on Pax, if I did that, I'd really have to be conscious of not making this a royal bloodline, because that's not what Red Rising is.
You spoke a little bit about how you had difficulties outlining book 6. Can you talk about how that'll affect your process going into book 7?
I think, very little asked. I think that I was putting down facts, I was putting down locations, instead of putting down feelings. I think the next one I will still do an outline, but instead it'll be paragraphs. It'll be paragraphs instead of bullet points. Bullet points don't make sense to me. Paragraphs make sense to me because then I can sink into the context of how I thought about the idea and how we got there and what informs my character's decisions. Plus then it's a vague idea, which is how I function best. As long as I know my trajectory, I'm good. So I think it'll be a shorter outline, maybe 3 or 4 pages, and it'll be paragraphs. And I think that will relieve a lot of the burdensome things in my head, because sometimes I feel very reticent to let go of certain bullet points, and I think I have to hit them all. And then I realize no one cares, no one sees those bullet points. All you guys care about is the story, how we feel, how we got there, what it means. And if I embrace that as a writer, almost as if I'm reading it myself, then I'm engaged, if that makes sense. I need to find an way to make an outline that engages me.
Thank you.
You meant it.
Oh, cool, perfect. Thanks for doing this. Super big fan. Since the advanced readers copies that we got at Comic-Con all those years ago. Do you have any must-read books that you would recommend, whether that's just for enjoyment or that have shaped you as a writer?
Yeah, I'd say that recently it's Harari's books, Sapiens, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with, but then Homo Deus I found to be his best book. Sapiens is about how humanity evolved. Homo Deus is about how culture evolves and what the common myths that bind and make culture. And I found that to be really instrumental in my writing because I like economics and political science. And then his book, Lessons on the 21st Century, which is his guess at where we're going. So those have been really influential in the nonfiction world. Fiction world, you know, I think for me, I go back to the myths. You know, if you have just a general idea of Narcissus and you want to write, I don't think that's enough. I think you need to know what Narcissus meant to the Greeks. You know, for instance, I would also say that my favorite in the last 3 years has been reading Plutarch's Lives, where he does comparison lives between Romans and Greeks of the day. So he finds people where he thinks they have commonalities and does almost like a New Yorker style article on them. And it's hilarious, it's funny, it contextualizes history in a way. I think that we should all have been taught history. I think every history course should begin with reading historical fiction to find your way to ground yourself in their world, in those characters' world, and then you can see the macro gears shifting. I mean, the list could go on forever. Then I would say probably the most influential ever for me is not actually Dune, it's Shadow and Claw by Gene Wolfe, which is the writer's book. You know, it's a book where Neil Gaiman bows at the altar of. It is so difficult to read, but so rewarding. I've never felt better tone. In fact, the main character's name is Severian, where Severo came from. And then Severo, it's also a joke because servo in Latin means slave. So Severo came from that book. And a lot of Darrow was informed in terms of the unreliable narrative from that book. So Shadow and Claw is a masterpiece.
I'm curious as to, so in most stories, they go based off of you find the love interest at, later on, but starting off with Red Rising, you started off with Io. It appeared that he had that at the beginning, and that surprised me. What made you decide to have him start off with a love interest that, it was comfortable and everything, as opposed to searching for it, which he did later, but.
I wanted to, so I noticed a annoying trope in YA fiction at the time, love triangles, and I thought, let's kill that. And I said, it is not interesting unless one of the points in the triangle is dead. Because he's not free to fall in love with Virginia, because it indicts his very character. Is he allowed to? Because he's doing all these other things, and morally he was so behind his wife. And then he learns the greater context of her life, and she's not someone, he held her up on a pedestal because he didn't know any better and he was 16. And then he gets fuller context of her and realizes that she was flawed too, and used him in a way, and should have stayed alive, but she was 16. It's the Romeo and Juliet thing. They did stupid stuff because they were young and in love. But she was in love with something more than him. And I wanted him to feel that emotional reaction, jealousy from the cause, and to feel almost lesser than the cause in Io's eyes. Because all he wanted to be was very simple. He wanted to be loved, he wanted to be a father. And those things that he held up as the most important thing because his dad died for a cause. The woman he loved something more than him. And it made him feel small. And it made him have to look inward and almost come to terms with that before he could be free to fall in love with Virginia. And so what I wanted to do is create a love triangle with someone who's dead, and which the love, the future love, really made him come to terms with the truth of it. He had to accept Io's sacrifice of death. He had to accept that relationship. It wasn't just choosing between the wolf or the vampire. Vampire, obviously.
We got time for one last question. Yes, sir.
Hi, thank you for being out here. Mike, just a couple of questions. Out of all the books that you've written, Red Rising, which one has been your favorite one that you like? Just to use for Red Rising.
Golden Sun and Dark Age. Parts of Dark Age I didn't love to write as much. Golden Sun was fun because it was just, a rocket ship, and the world wasn't too complicated yet, and I was getting to explore exactly what I wanted to explore. It's with that in mind that I'm trying to, bring that more back into the series, because when things get more complicated, they can get slower. But with myopia comes excitement, going through things in front of you. So trying to bring that back a bit and trying to remember that from the romance of creating it. That was the most fun.
Yes, thank you so much.
All right, so we are just about out of time, but I do have one request.
I just want to tell you thank you for the series. Huge fan. I've been a huge fan for the whole time.
Keep going.
Yeah. I read it when I was in a really dark place, and it just it helped me. I was able to teeth and stuff. Like, it's just so good. And I also want to show you my Ragnar tattoo.
Well, I learned it when I was in the dark time myself, and books have always been, you know, a way to find a compass for me. So I appreciate you.
I have one last question actually. Pierce's publicist asked me to ask how many hours there are in here.
What's wrong with the other people?
But no, thank you everyone for coming. This is Pierce.